get a third opinion from Derek.
No, I'm fine.
I mean, I believe you, but I just want a third opinion. Yeah, and I'm.
Where else goes in there?
Huh? Yeah, I know. That's short. That's enough.
One four and 1-8.
Are they getting cookie? We can do one-on-one. I guess I'll put one lemon bar. I don't know.
I guess just do cookies. I don't even know why she wants some of that. She didn't make it.
They probably fit that way anyway, right? It's still safe to have. Oh yeah, I was waiting if it was okay. Testing 1-4, testing. Is it coming up on the stream? Can you turn 1-8 on? Testing 1-8. Testing 1-8. Testing podium mic 1-8. Okay.
Yeah, no. Ready? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for your attendance today, and again, welcome. Our first order of business is I'd like to call Leanne Franklin up. Leanne, who also is Director of our Pastoral Services, and Leanne. And after that, if you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Leanne.
Thank you. It's always a privilege and an honor to be here. And I love that our room is full. For those of you who don't know me, I was a chaplain here before, and I moved from Kansas City. I moved heaven and earth to be here because there is only one JPS. And every day I have new things to love about JPS. And I'm not lying because I'm a preacher and I can't lie. But what I loved about last week is how Mr. Early and the executive leadership team brought all leaders into these rooms to talk about the present and future challenges of healthcare. Working at JPS makes us smarter and wiser. And what I love about our leadership is always the eyes are not on the present needs, which are so compelling, but it's on the needs of the community. We see ourselves as serving and being stewards of all our resources for the community. So I love that vision, and I love that you're all here. Thank you. So will you please join me in prayer? Oh, Holy One, thank you so much for this opportunity to gather. Thank you for the opportunity to consider not only our present needs, but also the needs of the future. Thank you for this opportunity to plan and to envision and to collaborate. We ask that you grant us wisdom, grant us humility, grant us a spirit of compassion and community as together we meet the needs of today and we plan to meet the needs for an ever-expanding tomorrow. All this we pray in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Leanne.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Leanne, thank you for your nice comments. And I know you said you moved heaven and earth. Would you put in a prayer for me that I'll make it through another board meeting? Thank you very much for your nice comments. I've been so advised there are no citizens to address the board, which would take us down to item number 4, which is the approval of the minutes. We will have to take these two separate votes. I will remind those, because many of you were there on February the 27th. It was a joint meeting of the Citizens Blue Ribbon Committee, the Tarrant County Commissioners Court, and this board to really go over the basic report of the Blue Ribbon, the Citizens Blue Ribbon Committee. Mr. G.K. Manus is going to speak to this board as an update to that here in a few moments, but he's sitting out there on the front row. G.K., you were very instrumental not only with the Blue Ribbon, the Citizen Blue Ribbon Committee, in arranging that meeting, and we appreciate that very, very much. I also want to take the opportunity, as you recall, we had a chance that day to thank Lorraine Miller and Randy Morsey, who many on this board know, for their outstanding job as co-chair of that committee. And then I would be remiss, we said it many times throughout, I think that committee was, Trent, you'd probably know how many meetings you had, but I know our liaison members to that committee was Mr. Trent Petty and Dr. Roy Lowry, so I thank them for their service. Trent, thank you for all the time you gave. So in saying that, if there's no changes to those minutes, I would entertain a motion for the February 27th special call meetings, which was the joint meeting.
So moved.
Have a motion? Second. All those in favor say aye. Thank you very much. And then item number B is the March 8th. And again, they were in your packet and on the portal. Should you have any questions, I'll be glad to address them. If not, I'd certainly entertain a motion.
So moved.
Have a motion? Second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Thank you very much. Item number 5, we have a pretty full agenda today, and you know there's so many great things that goes on with this organization. I'm sitting here. I know Reverend Emerson's not here. I'm looking at 2 former chairmen over here on my left, Mr. Montgomery, Mr. Petty. So when you sit in this chair, it really is an honor to represent this organization and many, many things throughout this community. But probably the most fun thing is when we get our employees together. I think I advised the board last month we'd held the best of the best. This month, I can tell you in the last couple of weeks, I had the pleasure of being there and being a part of what I call the Celebrating Service Banquet about our outstanding employees. We held that on the 29th. I had a great crowd for dinner and their spouses and significants. At the end of the day, I have to tell you, it was a great evening. And when we have 49 employees with over 25 years of service in this organization. And again, I think that speaks well to the heritage and the reputation of this institution. The amazing thing is we have one employee with over 40 years of service to this organization, Ms. Irma Key. So thank y'all. I just want to let you know, Robert, I appreciate any time. I know many people on the boards and chairs of these committees. I do a lot of meetings other than this board meeting, and sometimes we get so busy I forget to stop and say thank you. So to all the people that serve on all the committees, there's a lot of time given. I say thank you very much. But other than that, Robert, I would turn it over to you for your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things that I wanted to point out. JPS has moved to the number 3 facility in the nation for organ donation and tissue donation. That's not a numbers game for us, and I've heard cynics say that we're chasing numbers. We want to beat out other institutions. I couldn't be more offended by those kind of comments. When somebody comes into this facility and we lose that person, the thing that keeps our physicians, our nurses, administrators, and everybody else going is the hope that somehow another life can be changed and another life can be extended. For those cynics in the world that say we're chasing numbers for this, they missed a ceremony last week when we met the family of Cassie Contreras. Cassie was 15 years old, and a life was ended way too soon. But Cassie, at that young age, thought that she could be an organ donor, and she saved 3 other lives by the fact that she was taken away at the age of 15. So for those who have any level of not understanding that, I would beg them and tell them please to come to a ceremony and hold the hand of somebody whose family members saved 3 additional people by the tragedy they faced. So it's not numbers, it's people. And I couldn't be more proud of the team at JPS for what they do, and the ICU team in particular, who have to face some of the most difficult issues that you and your family will face, obviously, but those folks up in ICU face it almost every day. And I couldn't have more respect for them in what they do. We had, it was a wonderful ceremony that we had. We had a flag that was raised, and it's raised in the garden next to JPS that we have, and it was a wonderful deal. As the chairman mentioned, we had a wonderful evening celebrating our employees who have been here a while. Those are just neat celebrations, and it's just wonderful when people come out and celebrate working here or excellence awards, and that's kind of what makes us tick. The other thing which is wonderful, we had 72 physicians who are credentialed and privileged here at JPS in Fort Worth Magazine for top docs. That's a neat situation. It's recognition for JPS and the kind of people we know we get to work with, but it's awfully nice in the community when others recognize it. They're not put in the magazine because they asked to be put in the magazine. They're put in the magazine because their peers suggested they be in the magazine. So that's a neat award for them to get, and we're honored to work with them. The last thing that we did is we had Doctor's Day. Doctor's Day was a really fun celebration that we had right here in this room, and we asked our doctors to come out, and everybody on the executive team served them because they serve others every day. So we were able to serve them. We had some kind of quiche stuff that everybody seemed to like. I'm not a quiche fan, but they had quiche. And then they had some other things that were there. But everybody had a good day, and it was a really nice morning. And Dr. Schrader, I want to thank you and the other doctors. As president of the medical staff, we had a much greater turnout this year. And what was also interesting is after we had the luxury of providing that food, how many people stayed to talk and to have that discussion, which is evidence of why you probably need a better milling area or a food court or something here at JPS, because a lot of things transpire when you sit around over food and chat and talk. and it's really tough in this facility to have that kind of dialogue. But one day, maybe one day. But thank you, Chet, for bringing your folks in. The last thing I want to mention to you is actually the fact that I had an omission, and I think I owe this to myself. I think I made a mistake, and I want to admit that and tell Mr. Norad that in particular. Mr. Norad made a request for a item to be put on the agenda, and I did not read my bylaws significantly enough as a good lawyer would read the bylaws, and didn't know that a huge amount of that authority was housed in me. So that dealt with the issue of mission and vision statement, and if you all will recall from my evaluation of 4 years ago, that's a subject matter that I am slightly sensitive to, because I came to y'all with a mission and vision statement, and y'all said, that's not your area. So when I saw the issue of wanting to put the agenda item on to discuss mission and vision, a slight form of PTSD set in, so I did not set it up as an agenda item. So, Mr. Norad, I want to, one, publicly apologize to you that I did not put that on the agenda, but it is not by which I hope it lacks the importance that it is. I've had an opportunity to discuss that with the chair and others, so if obviously during my time in the old political days, I would yield the balance of my time to you, Mr. Norad. If you, any comments you would like to make, I wanted you to be aware of that omission on my part.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the apology, and I obviously accept it. I was just suggesting that since we're in this planning period where we're making a lot of long-term discussion and decisions, that we often talk about things that are important to us, but they don't seem to be reflected in our operating statements as important to us. Our mission and vision statements seem to be very bland, and they don't really reflect what I would think we should have. So I've simply was suggesting that we have either governance or this organization talk about it. I don't think it should wait for the Saturday event when we get together and talk about some future thing. I think it's something that has to be mulled over. We have to talk about it. We have to ponder it and say, what is it we want to say? Some hospital mission statements are very direct. They're very clear. And some are very vague. And so we can continue to have a vague hospital mission statement that literally could be used by any healthcare organization in the world, and they could say, this is not inaccurate. But it'd be better, it's a tool that's useful if we say, this is what's important to us and this is our mission. And so I was going to suggest that we raise this as an issue and we talk about it in governance at a future meeting. And for just kind of put it on everybody's radar that we ought to talk about this and this ought to be an important thing. I've asked about this before, but as we get forward, continue to go forward towards big decisions for our future, it starts at the top. Doesn't have to. We can keep it vague and just kind of munder through, but we're denying ourselves if we don't. That's all.
Yeah, and Warren, if you wouldn't mind me adding to that, I reached out and spoke with Warren after talking with Robert, and Warren and I talked about it, and I kind of had to go back. I mean, as we all know, Warren is an attorney, but I went back and checked those board operating procedures. They are the ones in place. They were put in place in 2006. So again, I did have to go back and do some reading. And Trent, I know the last of the strategic plan that we actually approved, the vision mission statement, was exactly 5 years ago. So I think your point's well made, Warren. It's probably time to do that. We are scheduled May the 24th. We discussed it with Steve Montgomery. We're going to talk about some pre-budgeting. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. It's kind of, as you very well know, GK, we go back to the joint meeting of 3 groups. We were actually asked by one of the commissioners and really need to look at our strategic plan as we go about the process now that we're doing. So timing's perfect. And Steve, as we look at this, Roger, if you don't mind, we thought governance would be the perfect place. That would be a committee, everybody can vet, we can talk about that. We're not waiting to May the 24th and try to do all this in 1 hour. So we thought governance would be the best place.
Sure. The governance committee, a blue ribbon committee on its own right, would welcome the opportunity and work with Warren to get that taken care of.
Good.
Get started.
Point well made. Anything else, Mr. CEO, that you have for this?
No, that's all I have.
You
I know we have 2 presentations today, and I want to give them the time. But thank you all very much, and thank you for realizing the importance of some of the things we do here, such as Life Gift and some of the other powerful things. This is an organization that is designed to save lives every day in any way possible.
And Warren, I didn't check the agenda. I didn't know exactly what we were going to discuss that, but I do mention you being an attorney. So while we're talking about attorney, I happen to notice the next presentation is by our district attorney, Ms. Sharon Wilson. So, Sharon, if you'd come up to the podium, or if you'd like to sit, either one. I think you've got some guests, and the podium's all yours.
I do. And he had a PowerPoint which ought to be,
You snap your fingers, and Derek will miraculously get that PowerPoint moving, as well as 3 other people from the audience jumping up to get the PowerPoint moving.
You want me to be over there?
No, you can be right
Okay.
And Sharon, let me just say
Yeah, I know how
this.
this works.
If that's not enough people, I'll get up and go find out.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, what am I going to, what a good, point well made, Trent, point well made. That's what they do, it take 3 or 4 to do it.
Okay, there we go. So I'm very happy to be here with y'all today, and honestly, I apologize for not being here before now, because I've been the DA now for a little over 3 years, and we've had a contract with you for services, and so really I think that occasioned by Larry Thompson's leaving, because he was our longtime lawyer here at the hospital, well-respected, well-known, that it really gave us an opportunity to kind of look at exactly what we're doing, what value we may provide for you, what our office gets for it. So we just kind of want to go over a little bit of that with you. And I actually had the opportunity to review some of our old contracts with the hospital district, actually with JPS in the past. And you know, going back multiple years, there was actually a time when we had 5 to 8 lawyers out here, 3 to 5 staff people, and a big presence. And it has been much smaller than that now. Our contract with JPS fits within our civil division. We actually have 4 divisions in our office, and it fits within our civil division. And our civil division chief is here with us today, Robert Browder, who's Robert Browder, civil division chief. So it really, ultimately, it operates under his area of command. So we actually have a contract. We have a pretty limited contract with you all, and I wanted to go through it because, you know, what is that relationship like between us? And number one, we've got 1 prosecutor, 1 staff person, and the value of our contract is $377,971. That's actually what you pay us. It's gone down over the years because we tried to make it actually reflect the expenses and not be padded in any way. So number 1, Tarrant County jail-related medical claims, Tarrant County jail-related medical suits in federal and state court. 2, collection services, lien enforcement. 3, drafting review of contracts less than $200,000 with a lot of exceptions. D, 4, informed consent issues and issues relating to organ donation and tissue procurement, medical malpractice claims and suits, risk issues, emergency medical treatment and active labor act issues, and additional matters upon which either you all as the board of managers, general counsel, or we all agree to do. So here's basically what we received from payment, and I've kind of really just focused our data on the last 5 years. So 2014, we were at a high at that point, a budgeted of $449,000, and we're down right now to $377,971. And honestly, it may go a little bit below that, just because as we try to make that income or that cost match our costs. We have a new lawyer who doesn't have the years of seniority that Larry had, and that's a good thing, but it's also a slightly less expensive thing, so that's good too. One of the things that we do for you in subsection B of our contract is collection services, and we've talked a little bit there about what our collection amounts are that we've done for you in the last 5 years since 2014. And we're kind of at an all-time high. We're proud of that. The last couple of years have been great years. We do contracts less than $200,000, and it tells you a little bit in this next graph, not just the number of contracts that we're assigned, but the ones that we actually get reviewed and out in that year, and the length of time, the average turnaround time for the review of those contracts. That's important to us because as long as we have this contract, we want to be of service to you all in a timely fashion. E is the medical malpractice claims and suits, and
so, there just aren't a lot of medical malpractice claims and suits. That's great. And so there are the numbers for that, and we handle those for you. So here's a snapshot of 2017. Collections, we had 501 cases open. We closed 400 of those. The total collected was over $4 million, $4.2 million. We reviewed 282 contracts. We had 14 active claims or lawsuits, and 2 of those lawsuits actually settled. We currently still have 2 active lawsuits, but 2 of the ones that settled last year settled, as you can see, for quite a bit less than what the reserve amount was. There are other contract provisions, Tarrant County jail-related medical claims and suits, and those are actually claims against the district or an employee of the district. Because obviously we already represent Tarrant County, we represent the sheriff, so we're involved in those. I can tell you that in 2014 we had 9. In 2018 to date, we have 0. Last year, we had 4. Issues regarding informed consent, organ donation, and tissue procurement. As I understand it, we've had none in the last 2 years, and apparently there was 1 in 2015. Risk issues. Here's an example of that. It's really just kind of general legal advice. Apparently there was a bookshelf or something that collapsed at some point, and so the discussion was, what's the risk of that? Is it a settlement? Is there some reason that we ought to look at policies or procedures? Contract provisions. Additionally, Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act, which I understand is known in the trade as EMTALA. And we have had none in the last 2 years, and there was 1 in 2015. And then additional issues. And so those additional issues are kind of in the area of legal advice. And I've got a couple of examples, but there's not a lot. There's only been a couple in the last little bit. So you know that Larry Thompson is no longer with us. And this is Chris Taylor, and he's with us today, right back there. You want to look at that picture because he's thinner, he said, than he is. We're thrilled to have Chris Taylor. He came to us by way of Barlow Garsick. Before that, he was at Kelly Hart and Hallman. He's had 8 years' experience as a litigator. I think he's been well received, and his work has been well received here. And, of course, he's had several awards. He was on the grievance committee, which I think says a whole lot about his ethics and work product. Fort Worth top attorney. And, of course, I'm particularly proud that he went to Tech Law School, which is, of course, always better than Baylor. and he was staff editor of the Law Journal and Board of Barristers, and he's done a great job. He's been out here since the transition, and I think has been well received by everyone. Okay, so do y'all have questions? I think that what you're probably going to see is that this is a very limited contract. We do a very limited amount of work for you. As we go forward, and let me tell you, that contract term ends in September. We have had a contract with the hospital district for years and years. And I think that at some point we're going to all mutually discuss what the benefits are going forward and what those plans are. The contract has changed drastically in the past. I will tell you that Mr. Adams in the past had provided for me some information about other public hospitals around Texas, and primarily they're not represented by the DA's offices. I don't even know, primarily I don't even think they have relationships with DA's offices in those locations. So I mean, I think at some point going forward we're going to need to look at all those different aspects, but we stand ready to work with you all and negotiate with you and figure out how we best can serve you. And we do appreciate the opportunity that we've had to be your contractual lawyer for the last few years. Thank you.
Sharon, thank you so very much. Does anyone have any questions for Sharon while she's here? She mentioned.
Moot court. So there's mock trial and moot court when you're in law school. Mock trial is what you think it is. It's playing like you're a trial lawyer, right? Moot court is when you play like you're an appellate lawyer. So the moot court presentations are before a panel of fake judges, and they ask questions as if it were a presentation to an appellate court.
Charlie.
Yes, Trent.
Notwithstanding the shameless plug for Texas Tech University.
And you jumped right on that, I noticed.
I'd like to say, Sharon, thanks for coming. Yeah. But also, I didn't realize that Larry had retired, but I had a chance to work with Larry a lot when I was chair. And boy, he did a great job for this district and really have had incredible support and work with the DA's office. And I think we've been very, very fortunate to have him. and the work has been great. Their collections are off the charts and always have been. So just thank you on behalf of all of us.
Thank you.
Ms. Wilson, I will also tell you that even though, Chris, you were introduced as the newer and cheaper Larry Thompson, I will tell you that your time here has been well received by folks at JPS. We appreciate you and your willingness to be a part of the JPS team, as we will, you know, all the legal staff that we have. But thank you for being here, and Sharon, thank you for the appointment of Chris. Yeah.
Let me add one thing. The reason that we can lose Larry Thompson and not skip a beat, honestly, is because we still have Julie Creamer. Julie, would you stand up?
Yeah.
So she's the paralegal for JPS for years. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, let me say this as General Counsel. I work very closely with Sharon in her office and look forward to working with Chris. I've worked closely with Larry in the past, and so this will be, I anticipate that there are things that working together enhances this organization, and we do that, and we'll do that as we've done in the past. So look forward to working with you, Sharon.
Again, Sharon, thank you so very much for being here, and obviously I have, you didn't say, I know Robert's back there in the back with Chris. I thank them likewise for being there. I've had the pleasure of knowing them. So again, gentlemen, thank y'all very much for being here, and Chris, you're already here, but welcome. Thank you so very much. Again, you mentioned it may have been a couple of years. You know you're welcome here anytime you want to talk to this board, so thank you very much for being here. Our next item of business is another presentation we're very fortunate to have today, and I'd ask Mr. G.K. Manus, who is obviously Tarrant County Administrator. So, G.K., you've had the pleasure of speaking to this board before. Welcome back.
From the other Blue Ribbon Committee.
You know, I was going to make some really smart aleck comments at the beginning, but since this is part of a Blue Ribbon process, I better just keep those to myself, right?
We did wear blue shirts today.
I know, that's...
GK and I do have our blue, well, yeah.
There you go. Yeah, before I get started, I'd like to say two things. First of all, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, thank you for allowing me to come and talk with you today. I really appreciate it. Apparently, whenever I show up to some of your meetings, some of you have concerns. I was talking with Mr. Petty earlier, and at first he thought that something must have gone awry for me being down here, and I said, no, I've just come for more money. And he said, don't tell Mr. Adams that, because Mr. Adams thinks we're going to ask you all to buy more fire trucks for us.
That's been a long discussion between you and I've lost that discussion every time.
Yes, you do. Well, what I'd like to do this afternoon is just very briefly bring you up to date on some of the things that we're doing with the results of the Blue Ribbon Committee, and also to tell you that this past Tuesday I made a presentation to the Commissioners Court, and I really want to go back to the February 27th meeting. And Mr. Powell, you referenced that earlier today as the joint meeting, and I think the key word in there is joint. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. One of the things that we've always said, that the partnership between the Commissioners Court and the Board of Managers is extremely important. And when we went to the point that we began to develop the strategy, if you will, that was developed by the Blue Ribbon Committee, and then finally brought to the board and to the court on the 27th, it was very obvious to staff that this would not be an effort that would be solely a Commissioners Court effort, nor solely a board effort, but a true joint partnership as we went forward. And so if I could just review a little bit of what we've done, and then talk a little bit about how we see how we move forward with this process. Also a note that at staff level, we don't know everything. In fact, sometimes people question if we know anything. And what we seek also is your input. Okay, so if you feel like we're going the wrong way, if you can have if you can make comments on how we can improve our processes, then we look forward to that. So as you know, on February 27th, we had a report to the joint group of the board and the court as related to the results of the Blue Ribbon Committee. Mr. Petty, I want to thank you for sitting on that committee and really having a lot of input on that. Mr. Wynn, you were also there, and your input was very well received, and it helped guide us as those citizens, those community citizens, really looked at really two things. They looked at, first of all, the overall health of Tarrant County, futuristic health, and then helped try to determine what role JPS was going to play in the delivery of healthcare services, not just in the next 5 years or 10 years, but in 20 years, 30 years, such as that. Those were 12 community citizens who came together and were very diverse in their thought process, and went through some and put in the time that was necessary to go ahead and come up with recommendations, and they came up with 7 recommendations. And I think the interesting thing, and probably one of the most important things about those recommendations, is that those recommendations were made unanimously by the entire board. And the board, as I said, consisted of a very diverse group of our citizens. Since that meeting on the 27th, the board and the court asked us to come forward and talk and to provide you all with information as approximate costs as related to capital improvements for JPS. We provided those to the court and the board in early March, and so we've met our deadline. And so those are the things that we've done in the past. What we're looking for now is how we move forward. And we outlined some things that we thought that were important that we begin to analyze, gather data, so that a decision process could occur involving both the board and the court to determine how we structure a bond package, if we need a bond package, and I believe we do. It was unanimous with the board that there are some critical infrastructure needs of JPS. But also to answer some questions that any good planning process is going to require. And so what we're recommending to the court and to the board today is that, first of all, we need to make a determination as to how much revenue JPS can bring to the table that can be used for capital improvements. And that is non-debt revenue. 2 years ago, this board created the Future Fund, and I applaud you for that. You have at least $120 million, somewhere close to that number, in that fund today. We need to also determine if there's other revenues that may eventually become available that we can apply to some of the capital programs here. I think it's important, though, and we stress this with the court, that regardless of whatever these amounts are, the one thing that we have to keep in mind and ensure is that JPS must maintain a very strong financial position at the end of the day. You all have been very good stewards of the public's money in running this organization, and you're to be commended for that. And we want to make sure that nothing happens to injure or to cause that to be depleted as it relates to your financial strength. It's critically important. Second of all, I think that we need to begin to determine just how much debt JPS can issue, and have that cost of debt be covered by increased value in the ad valorem value. This board has historically, along with our Commissioner's Court, said that any debt service that may be issued has to be issued with the understanding that there would not be an increase in the tax rate. In fact, the court, at that moment when I made that comment to the court the other day, they were very strong in telling me that absolutely, that's what had to be. And even as some refer to it, that's the golden rule that not only this board has indicated, but it's also the golden rule that our Commissioner's Court has advocated in all of its bond package in the past. One of the things that we saw as we went out to our community listening groups was the need for community health centers. And community health centers, you have 40 different facilities, and they all provide a different level, or some of them provide a different level of service than others. And so we believe that it's important that we identify what types of services the new centers may include, and because if there are expanded services in the community health centers, then those services, some may not have to be replicated on the main campus. Some may have to, some may not. But we need to determine that because that was a very strong message we heard from our community, that they like the aspects of a medical home in their community. And it eases the transportation issue. It truly becomes a medical home. And that's very important. We also need to understand that whenever we build new facilities and put new services out there, that there's a cost that's associated with that. And that we're going to need to make sure that we understand what it's going to cost, or at least approximately what it's going to cost to do the operations of the centers. And quite frankly, that doesn't just apply to the centers, but it applies to every facility that we will eventually build here. We looked at the behavioral health facility. This was another element that was strongly encouraged that the district move forward in. The same type of approach that we've asked at the community health centers, that we also look at our behavioral health facility, determine how large the facility can be, what types of services you're going to provide, and last but obviously not least, the importance of knowing what the cost of providing those services are going to be. We don't want to build buildings and then not have the monies available to operate the buildings. It's pretty clear. I can talk about the hospital tower, the ambulatory center, and the cancer care center, and it's basically the same thing. We just need to do an analysis on all of those facilities. There was an issue that was raised in the 27th meeting, the February 27th, and that concerned the possibility of doing some activities as related to P3, or as we refer to as a public-private partnership. And I know to satisfy my bosses and probably to satisfy you all also, we need to do an analysis on that. There's certain things that you don't want to do with the P3. There may be opportunities that we look at that we can do with the P3. Even though we can do it with that type of service, we need to make sure that it's the right thing to do for the hospital district. And if we can, well, then we ought to at least consider it. You know, we talked today already about and we focused mainly on capital improvements for JPS and the hospital district. There was a second element and an equal element of the Blue Ribbon Committee's purpose, and it was to look at the futuristic healthcare needs of the county as a whole. The key to that is that it's the county as a whole. It's not just for a certain level of clientele, it's for the entire county. And so we believe that now is a great time to begin the process of really structuring a strategy on how we might approach a community health initiative. And we need to make sure that we include key players in that. Obviously, JPS is a lead entity in that. The public health department, other private hospitals, for-profit hospitals, MHMR, groups such as the Medical Society and the Hospital Association, to bring everybody and others, including obviously the board and the court. And that's a very important element because while JPS cannot provide all the services to all people, JPS is a community resource. And as a community resource, it is the one who has to serve as a backstop when other services cannot or will not be provided. And so at the conclusion yesterday and as the conclusion today, two things. First of all, what we try to outline is something that is going to take a lot of heavy lifting. and that's going to require a lot of work by JPS staff. This, I never want to get into the business of trying to tell you what you need to do your business, because you know much better than I do. And so we're going to be leaning on Robert and his people and really work together and bring the results that we find back to this board and also to the Commissioner's Court. My second and final comment is that, we've been at this for a while, and we have worked with your staff and a majority of your board members on this thing. Mr. Chairman and members of this board, I want to compliment you, but just as importantly, maybe more importantly, I want to compliment the efforts that your staff has brought forward in this. And it has been a collaborative effort at staff level. It's a collaborative effort at both the appointed and the elected positions. And we want to maintain and ensure that we move forward in that same collaborative effort. And Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'll be more than happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
GK, thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here. Are there any questions for GK from the board? Warren?
I have a couple of questions. I've heard people talk about this public-private partnership, and I don't know what that means in terms of a hospital. Can you give me a couple of examples of something like that?
I can give you an example generally, okay? And the key is that does it apply in these situations? So let me probably give you the easiest one, okay? One of the areas that was included in the needs of the hospital district was a parking garage, okay? We have seen efforts where that a private vendor will actually come and build that garage and operate that garage and receive revenues off the utilization of that garage to help pay for their costs, and also provide a revenue stream to the entity the public entity that contracted with them. And then after a certain number of years, probably about 30 years or so that they can not just repay the debt that they finance, but in a private sector operation, it's a profit motive. Sure. And they need to receive that also. That basically the key then is the keys then are turned over to the public entity to own and operate the facility. That's a very general approach to public-private, and I've seen it work in several areas. It works well. There's some hindrances to that also, and those are things that we simply need to, at least I believe we need to evaluate to see if it fits here. If we do something like that, then what happens is that the district doesn't have to go sell debt to pay for that, because the debt is financed through a private entity, and their repayment is revenue that is generated off of that entity. Sometimes it's a building, but I don't know if that would really apply to what we're looking at here. My court wants to at least have a discussion about that, where that the district would pay rent. The downside to that is if the voters approve debt service to be utilized, that the district, you're AA plus, Robert, AA plus, which is the highest rating a public hospital can get. The amount of interest that you're going to be paying for that debt is going to be less than what a private sector group can go out and borrow the money to do. So there's pros and cons about both of that. So that's what we're basically talking about.
Thank you. The other question I have is, you mentioned a minute ago that you want to avoid changing the tax rate.
Yes.
Of course, our upcoming budget, or the budget we're in now, I think keeping the tax rate the same raised about, I want to say it's $50 million or more, something like that. So our budget went up by $50 million without changing the rate, because of course valuations go up. Is the goal then, from your perspective, to ensure that the growth in our property taxes plus whatever else comes in is going to be enough to offset the operational costs and the payments for whatever debt we assume?
That's what we're, the tax rate aspect as far as covering the debt services, I think that's what the court is talking about as far as incurring debt and paying that off. So it would be a sinking in INS fund, interest and sinking fund that would be created. But whatever monies that are put in there come from the growth of the AV values that we have. Now, as it relates to operating costs, that's an issue that we're always very sensitive about. Right. And as each and every one of you know, only about 30%, I believe it's 27 to 30% of your revenue that you utilize for maintenance and operation comes from the tax rate or or ad valorem tax. The rest comes from other sources. And so, you know, we always strive not to increase the tax rate. And I know that, but the comments that the court had were driven mainly to support the debt payments.
I appreciate it. Yeah, because we all know that there's a major hospital in a neighboring county that did exactly what we're talking about that we want to avoid doing.
Yes, we do.
The cost of running the hospital is not inconsequential.
Yes. If
we're going to build a new building and have more square feet and bigger and more beds, there's going to be an operational cost that we have to plan for.
And Mr. Norwood, that's why, and excuse me, that's why in our presentation we talk about the importance of knowing to a certain extent, you know, a good number as to what it's going to take to do the M&O, the maintenance and operation of the facility.
Yeah, buildings don't do operations, right?
That's correct.
So,
yes,
thank you very much.
You're more than welcome.
Any other questions for GK? Well, GK, again, thank you so very much. And again, thank you for your entire leadership through this entire process. And I mean that this board has a lot of work to do. And just like Warren, you mentioned, it's in your strategic, it's going to be in our strategic plan, that whole question of operational cost, not on just what we have now, but anticipated whatever we get for additional facilities and capital expenditures, that we have all those dollars. We know where the dollars and revenue is going to be coming. So we've got a lot of work to do. So to the finance team and to the executive team of this hospital, I know you're busy, but you're fixing to get busier. So, and this board's going to be involved in off-sites and strategic planning and finance. All that's already scheduled, GK. So we look forward to working in a partnership with you.
Thank you, Mr. Manias.
Thank you so much. Thank you, GK.
By the way, I do like your new setup here with your boards and everything. I think it speaks well of an entity that needed to have this, and I commend you for doing that.
Thank you, GK. Thank you very much. And also, I didn't say it when you said it, but we're also very proud of that AA+ rating. Absolutely. For our bonds. That we're very.
There's five guys down in my building that are very proud.
Yeah, we don't want to brag on that much, but I will just tell you that this board is very proud of that. So thank you, GK. The next item is for the medical staff, and I would call on Dr. Schrader.
So outside of a thank you for the Doctor's Day, a sincere thank you from the medical staff to the administrative team that served, and a special personal thank you to the person who continuously got me coffee all morning, almost pushed it. Outside of that, no update, and we'll just refer to credentials in closed session.
Great, thank you so very much. I was going to say something. It was Dr. Schrader that wanted the quiche that you were talking about.
Is that it? I knew the quiche had to come from somebody.
Yeah, it was Dr. Schrader. Next, I'd like to call on item number 10 from the acclaimed physician group, Ms. Diana Prachel, if you'll come up, Diana. Good afternoon.
Thank you, sir. If you have been at the Finance Committee, you know that Acclaim continues to perform well against our budget this year. We onboarded 3 new providers in March. All 3 were advanced practice professionals, 1 for GI, 1 for women's health, and 1 for geriatrics. We had 5 contract offers accepted during that time. 2 of those 5 were for palliative care providers. One of our goals is to expand our palliative care team because we're having way too many of those conversations late in the event instead of early. So that palliative care team will be available for outpatient education and consults for the first time, which we think is going to help our length of stay, et cetera, at the hospital. We have 27 additional contracts that have been signed. Those start dates go from April through September of this year. Over the last 3 months, we have onboarded 21 new providers. 13 of those are advanced practice professionals. As we continue to onboard a larger number of advanced practice professionals, Acclaim has created a professional practice forum for our nurse practitioners and physician assistants, and that forum is providing opportunities really for professional development, networking, and general onboarding and retention support. As you're probably aware, our folks go all around the district, and some are very isolated away from the main campus. Last night at our most recent meeting, one of our nurse practitioners shared her capstone project for her Doctor of Nursing practice. We've had 2 of our nurse practitioners receive that award this year. We're very proud of them. We also have a group of providers, physicians, who are working on an annual evaluation tool for our medical leaders that would be similar to the same process that we go through here on the operational side as we prepare for annual merit. We're going to do the same thing for our physicians, and so they're working closely with our HR team to maximize our tools and systems for Acclaim. And that's my report for this month.
Donna, thank you very much. I will also ask Chuck anything in Acclaim that you'd like as executive. If there being no additional, thank you very much, Dinah. We will move forward to the next item, which is our committee reports. And our first one being obviously the Finance Committee. You've heard the date several times. On May the 24th, we're kind of scheduled, instead of having an off-site, we thought we'd just hold it here at the hospital during the normal finance, since that'll be underneath the finance. And at that particular point in time, we will adjust the time to have the luncheon at the end or whatever, but we'll do it all here. And so we'll start the preliminary budgeting process, and I know that excites Sharon and the entire finance team, along with whatever GK just said on all the other issues. So Sharon, we look forward to working with you, and also we'll talk about some of the strategic plan that GK mentioned and some of those points that we'll address as we move forward. And then Warren obviously has the information about the mission vision. It's in governance, so 24th could be a busy day.
Busy.
So, Steve, all yours.
Okay, the Finance Committee, also known as the other Blue Ribbon Committee.
The other Blue Ribbon Committee.
Met on March 22nd, I believe it was. We reviewed the financials from February, and we also forwarded for consideration by the full board, I think 8 contracts or contract amendments for your consideration. That was it.
Is there any discussion for Steve? If not, we'd move to item number 12. The first one being resolution, the American Academy of Pediatrics. Is Wanda here? There she is. Oh. Which one?
Sharon.
Oh.
Sharon.
Sharon, we were talking about so much. Anything you need to do as far as financial report or?
If you want to pass on it, that's fine. We did a full report at
Finance. Steve, I think you had the full, anything else you need to add? No, sir. No. If that be the case, we'll move forward then. So, Wanda, thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm here to present to you the neonatal program plan, which is coming down from the legislation as part of the Texas Administrative Code. As part of that, they require that all hospitals that provide newborn care must have a designation for the level of care that they provide. And in doing that, it kind of came into a 2-part program. One was an on-site visit that we had about a month and a half ago, where the state came in and did a 2-day survey of our program. And I'd like to recognize Pat Allridge and Raquel Armstrong of that team that did an amazing job. And they were very impressed with our program. The second part of that is that we must have a resolution that is signed by the board and the MEC stating that they will continue to support our neonatal program and will continue to fund it at a level 3 designation. Part of that resolution also impacts our Medicaid funding. In order to get our Medicaid funding, we need to have this resolution signed. So as a result of that, I'm asking you to accept this resolution from the Board of Managers to support our neonatal program.
Quick question.
Yes, Steve.
Level 3 is what we're.
Yes, sir.
Is that the highest level? Or?
No, it's the next one down.
Next one down. Okay. So aspirations maybe for, because we deliver so many babies.
Maybe we have a new building at some point, maybe.
Whenever I buy a computer, I always want to know, what do I get if I spend $50 more? What do I lose if I spend $50 less? What does it cost? What do we get out of this level that we're not getting at the next level, or we're not benefiting by, that we're not paying between the level that we are in, that we're in, as opposed to the next higher one and the next one below?
I'm defer to Raquel Armstrong.
She
Raquel, you
is.
wanna join
She's on her way.
Yeah,
She's on her way up here, as far as, she's our expert, and Raquel actually received the designation to go and survey other hospitals, so she's been, she's our resident expert on that.
I'm Raquel Armstrong. I am the manager for the NICU. We actually do not qualify for our level 4 status because we do not have the subspecialties as far as pediatric surgeons, pediatric neurologists, that sort of level of care. So we couldn't meet those qualifications. So we are meeting the highest qualifications that we can support here at JPS.
And what are the benefits of being level 3? There is, I guess, a financial incentive that's what?
There is no financial incentive. It just allows us to care for, because currently we're caring for babies as young as 23 weeks gestational age and up until, post-term. Right. And it really, as ill as they come, we can care for those babies. So this is part of a designation to say what the state is trying to do is say all hospitals who say they provide level 3 care, the baby, no matter which hospital they deliver at, they are going to get the same amount of care at each of the hospitals. Because there are some hospitals that say we are level 3, but we're only going to take babies who are 32 weeks gestation and above, and that really is not a level 3.
So kind of level 3 minus, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So they're trying to make it to where all the citizens of Texas know the type of care that they can get at the hospitals that they deliver their babies at.
Okay.
So anyone who delivers here, they know, oh, if I have a baby that's 23 weeks, JPS has all the resources and the support to care for my baby.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Any other questions for Wanda? If not, I'd entertain a motion for passage of the resolution as presented. Have a motion? Have a second? All those in favor say aye. Those no. Ladies, thank you so very much, and thank you for what you do.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, before Raquel and Wanda leave, y'all don't realize as board members how many times state and national surveyors come in here to review you, and it's very much like in your own home, when you get a knock on the door and 7 people say, "Hi, I'm with the IRS. Nice to see you, Mr. Petty." It obviously is a challenge. Sorry, I pulled you out on that one. But I think what I want to do is take the caliber of a Raquel Armstrong and the caliber of a Pat Ulrich and the caliber of a Tricia Elliott and all the rest of the folks that deal with Joint Commission and ACGME and the inspections that we have for sepsis and the inspections that we have for every level here. And those are really, really difficult for anybody. It's just a challenge. Dorothy remembers it when the day she was here. That is a really hard thing, and you all get to see the outcome of that. And in our case, those outcomes have been fantastic. But the hard-working folks like Raquel and Pat and Tricia and Wanda and others that make that happen so you all get good results shouldn't go unnoticed, and I can't thank y'all enough.
Thank you.
Again, ladies, thank you so very much. Which takes us to item number 13, which is the consent agenda, which obviously was on the portal and has been, all these have been addressed by committees upon their recommendation. If there's any discussion, we'd be glad to or pull off. If not, I'd entertain a motion for approval. Have a motion, Mr. Petty, a second by Dr. Weber. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. Next item of business is any report from legal counsel, Mr. Adams.
Yeah, a couple of things. Pursuant to Mr. Montgomery's the policy, the Finance Committee report that posted to your website is a list of the contracts for the month of February that were under $200,000. There were 22 of those. When you look at the report, we've added a column. Anything over $50,000 is presumed to be bid. Obviously, if it's less than that, it does not have to be bid under the County Purchasing Act and your policies, which are consistent with that act. We are now reflecting if an RFP went out or if it was over $50,000, it fit within an exception. So you'll note that any contract now that's over $50,000 on that list in value, it's either been bid or it fit in an exception. The other thing consistent with this board's amendment of Mr. Early's contract authority, increasing that from $200,000 to $500,000. There was one contract that was between those two figures in the month of February. So that, and then I have one action item. We have an easement. This is related to the Northeast Clinic. This did not go through finance, Mr. Montgomery, but it came in at the last minute. Unfortunately, it had been sitting on the contractor's desk since November, and at the last minute, they came in and sent it to us and said, well, we don't have it, it's going to delay that project for 30 days, and talked to Mr. Rule, and I decided that we needed to get that done. We thought you would want that done as well. And so there's an easement. It was posted to the website last Friday. It's a standard easement, utility easement, but they got to have it before they can actually complete the building. So I need a motion to approve that easement.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor say aye. Thank you very much. I was noticing Ms. Barksdale sitting there. I'd hate for you to have to go back to Commissioner Fickus so we can get electricity. So that would not be good.
No, I think Mr. Petty might have some problems with that too.
Yeah, let's just say that I'm glad we can get electricity. That brings us obviously to the end of those items, which will take us at 2:10.
Before you do that, Ms. Clark and I have a really ugly hat that Dr. Weber gave us. We had a wager with him, and we were all very confident, or Sharon and I were very confident after our Aggie basketball team beat North Carolina the way they did in Charlotte, that we would easily beat Dr. Weber's team. We lost, and so we have a new hat in our wardrobe.
I know neither one of y'all are putting it on.
Hey, way to go, Sharon.
Yeah, very nice.
It looks good.
Mr. Adams,
let me get out of this picture.
There you go.
Take my pen. I want to do a gig.
There you go.
Who has access to the publication that goes out at A&M? We need to send a Facebook or something on this one.
I'm sorry, but those types of publications aren't allowed on A&M websites.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher.
Well, I'm glad we got through that. So anyway, again, we will now, I don't think we'll be in closed session very long, but we will go to close in about 10 minutes. Let's just say about 2:20, we'll start closed session. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will now reconvene in open session, the time being 2:30. And we've had a lengthy day. I appreciate everybody's input and engagement. We've certainly had 2 additional presentations made today by the DA's office and also by the county administrator. Appreciate them keeping us up to date. Appreciate them being here. Is there any other business to come before the board? Then if there not being any, I see none, we will stand.
I need to request consideration of the board
Oh,
for
yes, the
credentialing.
privilege. Sorry about that. There is. Dr. Upper, thank you very much. I have a motion. I have a second. Mr. Petty. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Now there being no additional business to come to the board, thank you all very much for your attendance today. We stand adjourned. Thank you.